Hey guys, tonight we're stepping softly into a time when goddesses walked among mortals, not to deliver blessings, but to settle personal grudges in the pettiest, most elegant ways possible. You're standing in a sun-warmed village in ancient Lydia, where one young girl is about to get woven into legend, literally. You can hear the faint rhythmic beat of her loom, thread crossing thread, and you can almost smell the dyed wool, the oiled wood, and the sheer tension thick in the air. Now, just so you know, you probably wouldn't survive this era with your modern laundry habits. There's no washing machine, no detergent, and definitely no polite way to decline weaving duty. If you're a girl with nimble fingers, guess what? You're learning to spin whether you like it or not. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, leave a comment telling me your location and what time it is right now. I love seeing where everyone's listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start in colophon, or maybe Hapipa. Historians are still arguing over which town exactly can lay claim to her birth. Either way, you're in the dusty folds of what we now call Western Turkey. It's warm, the kind of dry warmth that makes your sleeves stick to your elbows. In a cramped cottage near the outskirts of town, Arachne sits with her head bowed over a frame. Her loom is rudimentary, wooden beams, stretched threads, a few clay weights, but what she creates on it is anything but. You lean in. The pattern glides out under her fingers. Flowers, birds, vines, each so vivid it looks like they might flutter off the cloth and into the wind. She works fast, too. Her shuttle flies, her feet tap, her eyes barely flicker. This isn't just craftsmanship. This is art. The kind that makes people stop and stare, the kind that makes wealthy merchants mumble prayers just in case they're witnessing a miracle. Her father, a dyer by trade, used to tell customers that Arachne's hands were kissed by the gods. It wasn't true, of course. The gods don't kiss anyone unless something dramatic's about to happen. But it sounded nice and it helped business. Arachne's reputation grows like ivy, creeping, curling, undeniable. People start walking for miles just to glimpse her tapestries. Some bring her wool and ask for a favor. Others bring coins. A few just gawk. Someone, at some point, makes the fatal comment. This is even finer than what the goddess Athena herself could weave. Now, you'd think that's where the trouble starts, right? One careless compliment overheard by the wrong immortal. But it wasn't a single comment. It was many. And Arachne, bless her confidence, didn't exactly discourage them. She never claimed to be better, per se, but she also didn't correct anyone who did. After all, what's a girl to do? Pretend she's mediocre? Her fingers ached from hours at the loom, her nails stained with dye and her shoulders sore from leaning. Every pattern she created was hers and hers alone. The gods didn't help, she did the work. But of course, if mythology has taught us anything, it's that gods are deeply insecure celebrities with lightning bolts and the habit of showing up uninvited. And when you start to outshine a deity, especially one like Athena, who prides herself on wisdom, warfare, and weaving, you can expect a confrontation. Before we get there, let's pause for one mainstream fact. Weaving in the ancient world wasn't just a chore, it was power. Textiles were currency, dowry, status symbol, and spiritual offering all in one. In Athens, peplos robes were woven annually as a sacred gift to Athena herself. In Egypt, linen strips bound the did. And in early China, silk was so valued they measured wealth in bolts of it. Across cultures, a woman with a loom wasn't idle. She was producing capital. Now, here's your quirky tidbit. Some ancient looms were so large and upright that women had to stand on tiptoe to work the top threads. Talk about a calf workout. And you thought your standing desk was hard on the knees. But back to Arachne. She's still weaving, still stunning her neighbors, still ignoring the quiet warnings murmured by wise old aunties over garden walls. Even one tells her, "Careful, girl, spiders spin, but they also trap." Arachne rolls her eyes. She's heard it all before. Besides, what's the goddess of war going to do? Challenge her to a duel with knitting needles? Now, here's where scholarly debate kicks in. Some say Arachne was genuinely arrogant, puffed up by praise and hungry for divine attention. Others argue she was simply young, gifted, and tired of pretending that talent must always hide behind false modesty. Was she proud? Maybe. But was she wrong? That's murkier. Still, the gossip swirls. The compliments shift into whispers. What began as admiration is now blasphemy, bubbling dangerously close to Olympus. Somewhere, high above the clouds or deep within a marble hall, Athena's eyes narrow, and across the mortal realm, the air grows heavier. You might not notice it, not right away, but the birds quiet a little sooner in the evening. The sheep seem restless. Even Arachne's threads catch more than they used to, snagging at odd angles, fraying when they shouldn't. She shrugs it off, but the omen is already written in wool. In the background, her father coughs. He's getting older, and the dye shop isn't as bustling as it once was. Arachne sells more tapestries now than he ever sold bolts of cloth. The balance has shifted. She's the provider. She dreams, occasionally, of teaching others, of starting a school, of maybe, just maybe, competing in the grand competitions held in temple plazas where the finest artists of Lydia display their work and the priestesses bless them. She's never been allowed, of course. Women aren't supposed to enter, but dreams are stitched from disobedience, aren't they? And just as her dreams begin to take real, dangerous shape, the old woman arrives. Not a priestess, not a merchant, just a stranger, cloaked in dusty gray with tired eyes and a voice that curls like smoke. She compliments Arachne's tapestry. She asks about the pattern. She smiles in a way that isn't quite kind. Then she says, "You should be grateful. Your hands are skilled, but they serve the gods." Arachne scoffs. "I owe no one, not even Athena." The loom creaks. The air stiffens. Somewhere, the first thread of the contest is already pulling taut.
The old woman doesn't flinch. She simply tilts her head, as though considering Arachne under some different kind of light, some older truth. Her fingers brush the edge of the tapestry, like she's remembering a texture from long ago. You don't realize it yet, but this moment, this barely noticed breath in the room, is the hinge of everything. You glance at Arachne. Her jaw is set. The proud tilt of her chin hasn't wavered. She isn't cruel, exactly, just confident. Too confident, maybe, for a world where goddesses tend to show up with thunderclouds and exit via vengeance. You can't help but admire her a little. After all, how many mortals get the chance to look a veiled divine in the face and say, "No thanks, I'll take credit for my own brilliance"? The old woman warns her again. There's still time to back down, to apologize, to pretend, if only for politeness' sake, that the goddess of wisdom was her muse. "Humility suits mortals best," the woman says softly. But Arachne laughs. Not a cruel laugh, just tired. She's heard this line before. If Athena thinks she can do better, she's welcome to try. And just like that, the disguise peels away. There's no flash of lightning, no chorus of thunder, just a shiver in the air, like the room exhaled all at once, and when your eyes adjust, the old woman is gone. In her place stands Athena herself, bronze-helmed, silver-eyed, regal and rigid as marble in morning light. Arachne blinks. Her hands are still on the loom, frozen mid-thread. Around her time stutters. Somewhere, a chicken clucks in confusion. A cat outside the cottage window bolts. Athena says nothing at first. She just looks. And in that gaze is every temple column and war chant, every scroll of law and smoothed blade of a spear. It's terrifying, and it's beautiful. Then the goddess speaks. A contest, then. Arachne nods before her courage can catch up with her doubt. And so they begin. You've never seen anything like it. Two looms stand side by side, one mortal, one divine. The threads are different. Athena's shine with an inner luster, spun from cloud silver and sacred wool. Arachne's are simpler, dyed with roots and berries, soaked in sunlight and labor, but both shimmer with promise. They work in silence. No music, no humming, not even a whisper, just the soft beat of shuttle against thread, the rhythmic tap of foot pedals. You imagine that if you pressed your ear to the wood, you'd hear the pulse of history itself. Now here's your mainstream historical fact. In ancient Greece, weaving wasn't just an art. It was a fundamental part of a woman's identity. From aristocratic ladies in Athens to enslaved women in Sparta, nearly everyone knew the loom. Marriage contracts even listed textile production expectations. A girl's dowry might include not just property, but the amount of wool she could spin in a week. But Arachne wasn't weaving another tunic. She was telling a story. And what a story it was! Athena, true to form, began with triumphs. Her tapestry showed the gods in all their glory, Mount Olympus glittering with divine perfection, Zeus hurling bolts, Poseidon raising seas. Her own corner of the tapestry? A depiction of her contest with Poseidon for the city of Athens. He struck the earth with his trident and summoned a sulphy spring, while she gifted the olive tree. Useful, enduring, beautiful. The city chose her. It always did. Her work gleamed with reverence, each thread a prayer, each border traced with orderly vines and structured borders. It was, in a word, flawless. Then you turn to Arachne's. It's different. Where Athena's tapestry sings of honor and order, Arachne's hums with irony and fire. Her figures are gods, yes, but not the gods you'd see in temples. Here is Zeus disguised as a swan, pursuing Leda. There he is as a bull, sweeping Europa away. Over there, Apollo chasing Daphne, who turns into a tree to escape him. Dionysus drunk and stumbling. Hera scowling. Hades stealing Persephone beneath blooming flowers. Each scene tells a truth, though not a flattering one. Her gods are flawed, mortal-like, petty, lustful, capricious. You can feel the tension bloom like bruises in the air. Every figure she weaves seems to whisper, the gods are not just. Now here's your quirky tidbit. Ancient tapestries sometimes included hidden signatures, tiny names worked into borders or nestled in folds of clothing. We don't know if Arachne signed hers, but if she had, you imagine it would have been tiny, fierce, and a little smug. Historians still argue whether Arachne's tapestry was meant as an insult or an act of courageous truth-telling. Some say she was trying to shame the gods. Others think she was documenting reality, refusing to varnish the past with divine polish. Still others believe it was personal, an act of defiance against a pantheon that never gave her credit. What isn't up for debate is this: her work was perfect. So perfect, in fact, that Athena couldn't find a single flaw, not a frayed edge, not a mismatched die. It was flawless. And it made her furious. Not because it was wrong, but because it was right. The silence after they both step back is unbearable. You can hear your own heartbeat, or maybe it's just the soft ticking of an empty loom. Athena's hands curl, not into fists, but into something colder, controlled. You think she might congratulate Arachne, praise her skill, acknowledge her rival. But instead, she rips the tapestry in half. The sound tears through the room. Arachne gasps. Her father stumbles backward. Threads snap and flutter like dying butterflies. Athena turns, expression unreadable, eyes dark. Then she says, softly, "No mortal may shame the gods." You blink, stunned. The tapestry lies shredded, the contest undone. Arachne sways, lips parted in disbelief. But Athena isn't finished. With a word, no louder than a sigh, she reaches forward. Her fingers stretch toward Arachne's brow. You see it in slow motion, as though the world is softening around the moment. A gesture, a punishment, a transformation. She whispers, "Live, then, and weave." And Arachne begins to change. It doesn't happen all at once. There's no burst of divine fireworks, no dramatic gust of wind. Just a stillness, a flicker in the light, a breath held too long. Then Arachne's body begins to fold inward, elegantly, horrifyingly. Her arms pull close to her chest, her fingers extend and twist, joints multiplying. Her legs thin and lengthen, her waist narrows into a fragile stalk. You hear her gasp, not in pain, but in fear, surprise, and some inescapable recognition. Athena watches, unblinking. You want to reach out, say something, undo it. But this isn't your world. This is divine justice, or divine spite, depending on how you look at it. And mortals don't get a vote. Arachne shrinks. Her skin darkens into a glossy sheen. Her mouth vanishes. Her limbs multiply, 8 now, each one jointed and precise. Her hair draws upward and vanishes. Her eyes shift, multiply 2, 2, 4, 6, 8. She is not human anymore. She is spider. And yet, somehow, you can still see her in there. Still graceful. Still proud. The spider, small, brown, speckled with tiny golden bands, lingers where the girl once stood. She doesn't flee, doesn't scurry. She stands her ground. Athena nods, just once, then turns and walks into the fading light. Now here's your mainstream historical fact. In ancient Greek culture, transformation, or metamorphosis, was a common theme in myth. Gods changed people into trees, birds, rivers, constellations. It wasn't always punishment. Sometimes it was mercy. Sometimes it was escape. But in Arachne's case, it feels like something else entirely. A sentence that doubles as a legacy. Historians still argue whether Athena turned her into a spider out of rage or admiration. Was it cruelty, or did she see in Arachne something eternal, something even Olympus couldn't erase? The myth leaves room for both. Quirky tidbit for you. The Greek word for spider is arachne. Yes, exactly the same. To this day, every time you hear the word arachnid, you're whispering her name. A girl turned spider, a story spun across centuries, all wrapped up in a little Latin taxonomy. Science has its own kind of myth-making. And let's talk about spiders for a moment. Not the jump scare ones or the 8-eyed nightmares you see in your bathtub. No. Think instead of the orb weaver. Those gentle artists who build perfect spirals at dawn, webs catching dew like necklaces, filaments stronger than steel for their weight. They don't just build, they compose. You like to think that's who Arachne became. Not a monster, but a maker. Not banished, but preserved. Back in the cottage, her loom still stands. Empty now. The torn tapestry hangs in shreds, swaying faintly in the air. Her father kneels beside it, dazed. He reaches out, fingers trembling, and touches one dangling thread. You feel the air shift again. The tension dissolves. The gods have gone home. And Arachne? She crawls upward, slow and sure, finding the beam above the door. She stops, spins, begins again. You stay a little longer, watching the first silk thread unfurl from her body like a sigh. It catches in the light, nearly invisible. She traces it with perfect grace, circle after circle, spiral after spiral, weaving not to challenge the gods now, but because it's all she's ever known. And now for a quiet detour. You're lying in your own bed. Maybe it's soft and warm. Maybe the blanket has that one little scratchy spot that somehow always ends up near your ankle. The hum of night is all around you. A fan whirs, a distant car rumbles. A neighbor's cat starts and stops a sentence you'll never understand. And somewhere, not far, not near, just somewhere, a spider is weaving. If you've ever watched one work, you know it's trance-like. The patience, the geometry, the rhythm. It's oddly soothing, hypnotic even. That's Arachne now, a goddess of the quiet craft, a priestess of patience. Back in ancient Greece, spiders weren't exactly celebrated. Most creatures small enough to crush with a sandal didn't get statues. But Arachne remained, if not in temples, then in stories, in corners, in cobwebs, in whispers. You can imagine a child pointing to a tiny web and being told, "Careful now, that's not just a spider, that's Arachne. She's watching, she's judging, and she remembers." The funny thing is, Athena probably did mean it as punishment. But immortality, that's no small curse, or blessing, or both. Because Arachne keeps weaving. Now, here's a fringe idea that historians love to toss around over warm wine. What if the entire myth was propaganda? Hear me out. Athena, goddess of wisdom, patron of the city of Athens, arbiter of logic and order, couldn't lose a contest to a mortal girl. So the myth was rewritten, framed. Arachne wasn't brilliant, she was arrogant. She wasn't right, she was disrespectful. Athena didn't lose, she delivered justice. You start to see how stories get spun, just like webs. Still, the myth endured. People retold it, painted it on pottery, embroidered it into linens. The Romans adopted it. Medieval monks copied it. Renaissance artists reimagined it. Arachne, tiny and silent, crawling through centuries. And she kept her name. You shift in your blankets again, chasing that cool spot on the pillow. Outside, a breeze picks up. Somewhere, a spiderweb sways gently. Maybe Arachne is nearby. Maybe she's spinning her latest masterpiece. Maybe it's about you.
You're still in ancient Greece, or at least a dreamy version of it, where the olives are always ripe, the sand is warm, and everything smells faintly of thyme and fig leaves. Arachne is gone now, in body anyway, but the cottage remains, the village whispers, and the story travels. It drifts from the hills of Lydia, carried by traders and travelers, woven into songs, and murmured by mothers as bedtime warnings. Don't boast too loudly, they say. The gods have good hearing. Now you're walking through the streets of a nearby town, not a grand polis, just one of those sleepy outposts tucked into a gentle valley. There's a marketplace, of course, someone selling dates in a rough wicker tray. Someone else has clay jars of olive oil with cracked tops and bees dancing around the rims. You pass by quietly, but you hear them, two older women, their hands busy with spindle and thread, speaking of the spider girl. They don't call her by name, just the girl who challenged a goddess. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Greek myths weren't just bedtime stories. They were conversation tools, cautionary tales, teaching moments. You didn't need a scroll or a chalkboard. You just needed a good tale. Morality and mystery rolled into one. And that's where Arachne lived now, in between thread counts and gossip, spinning her way through generations. The quirky tidbit?
The Greeks believed that spiders descended from the ceiling in dreams to whisper secrets from the gods. Yes, truly. So if you woke up with a spider on your face, well, first you screamed, but after that you might wonder what divine message it brought. Historians still argue whether Arachne was originally immortal at all, or just a local spirit folded into the Olympian myth machine. Some suggest she might have once been a household deity, protector of weavers, mender of nets, guardian of spindle baskets. That would explain the odd reverence you still see in places where spiders are swept out gently rather than squashed. Anyway, you keep walking, past the bronze worker's stall, past a group of boys throwing pebbles at fig trees, past a small shrine tucked into a limestone wall, dedicated to Athena, of course. Inside the niche, a small owl is carved into the stone. Offerings rest below, a bit of honeycomb, a braid of garlic, a single perfect pear. But someone, cheeky or reverent, or maybe both, has left something else too. A tiny web, spun between two sticks, delicate, empty, waiting. You don't touch it. You keep walking. You start to notice how common weaving is in this world. Not just the wool dyers and the loom workers, not just the old women in the corners with their drop spindles spinning in slow, hypnotic spirals. Even the fishermen talk about thread, nets, lines, knots. You pass a man repairing his sandals. He doesn't have leather, so he's using twisted flax. It'll hold, just barely. He doesn't look up as you go by, but you can see the pride in his fingers, making something last, stitch by stitch. And there it is again, the thread. Arachne's legacy isn't the spider. It's the act, the making, the pulling of one thing through another until it becomes something stronger, more complete. You sit beneath an olive tree near the town's edge. The cicadas hum lazily. A goat walks by with the slow confidence of something that's never known embarrassment. You close your eyes. You imagine Arachne not as a cautionary tale, but as a patron saint of persistence. The girl who saw injustice and answered it with beauty, who challenged power, not with violence, but with a loom. There's something comforting about that. Now, the Greeks didn't have bedtime podcasts, but they did have fireside storytelling. You picture it, a circle of kids, eyes wide, mouths sticky with honeyed figs, listening as their grandmother speaks low and slow. Her voice rises and falls like the sea. "She challenged a goddess, my dears," she says, "and she won. But you mustn't do that, unless your pattern is perfect." The children nod, as if any of them are planning divine showdowns before dessert. The fire crackles, the stars emerge, a breeze rustles the olive leaves. And far above, unnoticed, a small web shivers in the dark. You shift your feet on the cool dirt. Somewhere nearby a lyre plays, just a few lazy notes. Maybe someone's tuning it. Maybe someone's composing a ballad no one will ever hear. The sound drifts, soothes. You picture Arachne in her new form, spider legs splayed across a cypress branch, watching it all, still making, still watching, still herself. And that's the quiet triumph, isn't it? She was supposed to be erased, rewritten, a warming, but she endured. The thread didn't snap.
You wake, or maybe you never quite fell asleep. It's hard to tell in this twilight version of ancient Greece, where everything drifts between dream and memory. You're still lying beneath the olive tree, and the shadows have shifted. Longer now, gentler. The sky is all amber and rose, what the poets would call rosy-fingered dusk, as if the horizon is reaching down to tuck you in. You stand, brush a few leaves from your tunic,
and begin walking. There's a small path leading uphill, winding through olive groves and rough stone walls. Each footstep kicks up a little dust. The earth smells like rosemary and old stories. At the top of the hill sits a small weaving hut. Not Arachne's, no. This one belongs to someone else, maybe a priestess, maybe just another weaver trying to make her mark in a world where thread and cloth matter more than words. You push the wooden door gently and step inside. The walls are hung with woven samples, threads of saffron, indigo, crimson, the colors of empires and festivals and sacred rites. You run your fingers across a band of cloth so fine it feels like air stitched into form. And there, in the corner, is a small clay plaque, a dedication, to Athena, mistress of strategy and pattern. This is the paradox, isn't it? The goddess who punished the weaver also protects the loom. Mainstream historical fact? In classical Athens, weaving wasn't just women's work, it was sacred work. The act of creating cloth was tied to the city's identity. Each year, during the Pan-Athenian festival, women wove a massive ceremonial peplos for the statue of Athena. It was a civic duty and a spiritual offering rolled into one long thread. The quirky tidbit? The loom itself was sometimes named and treated like a living being. You'd feed it bits of wool, sing to it, even apologize if the warp broke, like a grumpy roommate with excellent posture. Historians still argue whether the myth of Arachne reflects actual anxiety about class and gender. After all, here was a mortal woman, poor, rural, unknown, challenging a goddess, and worse still, doing it with skill rather than prayers. Arachne didn't kneel. She worked. That alone might have been the real offense. You leave the hut and follow the ridge path. It overlooks a field where girls are gathering wildflowers, marigolds and poppies, and some strange spiky blue thing you don't have a name for. They weave them into each other's hair. They hum as they go. One is braiding a belt of grass. You catch a few words of the song. Something about Athena, something about spiders, something about pride. That's how myths spread, through repetition, through rhythm, through shared breath. You wander back down toward the village. It's quieter now. Lamps flicker in doorways. A cat winds its way along a wall like a stripe of moonlight. You pass a house where a woman is spinning wool by lamplight. She pauses to shoo a moth from her flame. Her face is calm, her fingers automatic. She's done this thousands of times, and she'll do it thousands more. Twist, pull, wind. Twist, pull, wind. You think of Arachne's hands, once calloused and strong. You wonder what became of them. Did the goddess leave her some spark of memory in her many legs? Did she retain that itch to create? Or was it erased completely, like chalk from a slate? You pass a shrine now, smaller than the first. No statue here, just a painted tile with a pair of eyes and a spool of thread. A local goddess, perhaps. Or maybe someone has claimed Arachne as their own. You pause. You leave behind a token, a smooth stone from your pocket, one side shaped like a crescent moon. No one sees. No one needs to. That's how most worship happens, quietly, between one heartbeat and the next. Back in the village, the fires are being stoked for supper. You catch the scent of barley stew, roasted leeks, and something earthy, maybe lentils or mushrooms. Your stomach rumbles like a temple drum. A group of boys chase a goat past you, laughing. One of them is holding a stick with a string tied to the end. He's pretending it's a spider's thread. His sister rolls her eyes and keeps shelling peas. You sit on the low wall beside the olive press. The stone is cool against your legs. The sky above is turning darker now, streaked with navy and indigo, dotted with the first stars. A bat swoops silently overhead. You feel like you're waiting, not for something dramatic, just for the next thread in the story. Because this tale, Arachne's tale, isn't linear. It's like a tapestry, woven in loops and layers. You've seen her in the village, in the children's games, in the spindle baskets and the temple walls. She's a thread running through the fabric of belief. She's not gone. She's reframed. And that, in the end, is perhaps the best anyone can hope for. To be remembered, not just for a mistake or a miracle, but for the mark you made, for the beauty you left behind, for the hands that kept weaving. You yawn, a long, slow one, the kind that makes your eyes water a little. You lean back against the wall and close your eyes. In the darkness behind your lids, a web begins to form.
You drift a bit, not asleep, not awake, just nestled in that in-between space where thoughts don't quite finish their sentences and the world softens at the edges. Somewhere nearby, an owl calls out, one long note, one short. You open your eyes again, and the village is darker still. A few hearths remain lit, but most of the households have drawn their shutters. The air is thick with the scent of burning olive wood, the faint metallic tang of dusk. You rise slowly, feeling the weight of the day in your limbs, and start toward a low stone building near the edge of the trees. It's a workshop, larger than the rest, with a wide wooden table and lengths of dyed cloth draped over beams. No one is inside, but the tools are still laid out. A distaff resting in a basket, hanks of yarn hanging from hooks, and half a tapestry still stretched across a horizontal loom. You step closer. The scene is half-woven, just outlines and bursts of color. A woman standing beside a spring, a lion crouched in the reeds, a tree with its roots exposed. It's not clear what story is being told yet, but you suspect it's one that's been started and abandoned a dozen times. That's the thing about myths. They're recursive. Retold so many ways, the threads fray. Mainstream historical fact. The ancient Greeks saw weaving as not just a domestic chore, but a metaphor for fate itself. The Moirai, the Fates, were imagined as weavers. Clotho spun the thread of life, Lachesis measured it, and Atropos snipped it. No loom, no life. Quirky tidbit? Some scholars believe that certain temples had sacred looms, reserved only for ritual weaving, operated only by specially chosen priestesses. The idea was that cloth made here wasn't just for clothing, it was for cosmic balance, like knitting the weather into shape. Historians still argue whether Arachne's punishment was meant to affirm divine authority or to quietly critique it. After all, Athena doesn't win through reason or rhetoric. She wins with transformation, which is kind of like a divine version of flipping the game board when you're losing. You walk past the loom and notice a little stool tucked beside the door. Someone's left a half-peeled pomegranate on the seat, a small knife stuck upright in its ruby flesh. You don't touch it. Offerings are best left alone. The woods behind the workshop are dense but inviting. Fireflies flicker low to the ground, little glints of gold on stems and stones. You step onto the path. It crunches beneath your sandals, the night still warm enough to keep the cicadas humming. As you walk deeper into the trees, you begin to notice strands of silk between branches. At first they're faint, barely perceptible in the moonlight. But then, more of them. Some stretched across the path, some spiraled into the crooks of the trees. Not dusty, not abandoned, alive. You duck under one especially thick thread. It glows faintly, picking up the light in a strange iridescent way. And you start to wonder, what if she's still weaving? Not just as a creature in a shadowy cave, but as a force, a whisper, a lingering pulse in every thread that refuses to break. You step carefully now, hands up, brushing aside the filaments like beaded curtains. You hear a breeze stir the branches, and with it, words? Not quite. Just the sense of them, a pattern forming behind your eyes. In one tree, you see a net of webbing shaped like a horse. In another, a spiral like a snail shell. And finally, perched high in the limbs of a twisted oak, a massive web strung from trunk to trunk like a canopy. At its center hangs a figure. Not monstrous, not divine, just still. You sit on a mossy rock and look up. She's made of shadows and moonlight, her legs bent in geometric grace, her body held taut like an arrow never loosed. Threads pulse gently around her, some wide, some so fine they vanish. You feel no fear, only stillness, reverence, like you've wandered into a cathedral where the stained glass is made of silence. One thread lowers slowly, brushing your shoulder. Not to trap, to connect. You place your hand on it and feel something hum, not sound exactly, more like thought, more like memory, flickering images passed from fingertip to fingertip. A girl at a loom, a contest, a god, a thread of anger, a knot of pride, a cut, a blur, a new form, an old truth. You whisper, "I see you," though you're not sure why. The web doesn't move, but the forest seems to breathe in, then out, and the connection fades. You stand again, slower now, and turn back down the path. The webs remain, but they no longer shimmer with the same intensity. Their purpose has been fulfilled. For now. As you leave the woods, you pass a small spring. Water flows gently over smooth stones. A reed bends and releases a droplet. In the reflection, for just a moment, you don't see yourself, but a woman with fierce eyes and a hand full of thread. She smiles. You blink. Gone. Back in the village, the wind is picked up. Doors creak softly. A lantern swings on a hook, its flame steady. You step inside a quiet room, perhaps your own, perhaps borrowed by story. The bed is low and straw-filled. A cat curls in the corner, tail twitching in its dreams. You lie down. The ceiling is made of beams, dark wood and spider webs. Of course it is. You smile. You close your eyes, and somewhere above, something ancient and clever keeps weaving.
Sleep doesn't come just yet. Not quite. You're still floating in that heavy, honey-thick haze where the real and the remembered begin to slip their labels. The bed is soft beneath you, scratchy linen pressing lightly against your skin, the straw crackling ever so faintly as you shift your weight. You listen. The cat snores. It's more of a flutter, really, like a moth stuck in a drawer. Somewhere outside, someone pours water into a basin. Footsteps creak across worn floorboards. This village doesn't go completely silent. It just hums differently after dark. Your eyes close again, and this time you don't fight the drift. You're back on the road. Maybe not the same one. This one is wider, lined with pale stones, and runs between wild olive trees and low-slung hills. The sun is higher here, late afternoon. Shadows stretch like cats along the path. You're not alone. Other travelers walk with you. Traders leading donkeys, women balancing baskets on their heads, a group of temple boys giggling as they race ahead and then look back to see if anyone is watching. And among them, an old woman sits by the roadside, carding wool. Her hands move with the slow certainty of someone who no longer has to think about motion. You sit down beside her. She nods, but doesn't speak, just hands you a bit of wool and the comb. You try. You fail. She doesn't laugh. She just adjusts your grip. Try again. Mainstream historical fact? Woolworking wasn't just women's work in ancient Greece. It was the measure of a good household. Penelope, wife of Odysseus, is practically defined by her weaving. Every day she wove, every night she unpicked the threads, stalling for time. She wasn't just patient, she was strategic. Fringe tidbit? Archaeologists once found a terracotta loom weight shaped like a woman's face, possibly a charm, possibly just a bit of whimsy. Imagine threading your wool over someone's tiny clay expression every morning. Talk about pressure. Historians still argue whether loom weights were purely functional or if some were tokens of protection, little idols to keep mistakes away, or worse, divine attention. Back beside the old woman, your fingers grow more confident. You card slowly, building a rhythm. It's not unlike writing, you realize, pulling order from mess, aligning, straightening, smoothing. The old woman starts to hum, a low tune with no words, no rhythm you can quite follow, but it's not unpleasant. You let it surround you like a warm mist. And then she speaks, not with her voice exactly, but with her presence. The thought says, she didn't ask for much, only fairness. You know who she means. Arachne, the girl with the gift no god gave her, the thread whisperer, the image conjurer, the one who didn't hold back because she didn't believe in limits. You picture her again, this time not as a cautionary tale, but as a girl in a crowded workshop, surrounded by noise and color and dye pots that bubble like cauldrons. She laughs, she teases, she works without hesitation, fingers darting across the warp and weft like lightning. They say she invented new ways of dyeing thread, that her reds were redder, her blues deeper, that she could depict eyes that seemed to blink and water that looked wet. And maybe that's just mythic exaggeration, but maybe not. Maybe she was just that good, and maybe the gods couldn't stand it. The old woman's voice returns. Athena didn't hate her. That's the mistake. It wasn't hate. You raise an eyebrow, or the thought of one. Admiration and anger, braided together, tight as a knot. Sometimes a god doesn't know which one they've tied. You nod, unsure if you're agreeing or just trying to keep up. The road glows now with late sun. Dust hangs in the air like powdered amber. A donkey sneezes. You brush the wool from your lap and rise. The old woman is gone. Only the comb remains. You tuck it into your belt and move on. Now you're in a courtyard, not yours, a grander one. Temple columns on 3 sides, a fountain in the middle, and walls painted with scenes of battles, weddings, and storms. It's quiet here too, but not deserted. A group of girls sit in a circle, each with her own bit of cloth or yarn. They're weaving something communal. Maybe a tapestry for the festival, maybe a bridal sheet, maybe just a lesson. They speak softly. One sings. Another laughs so hard she drops her shuttle. No one scolds her. You sit at the edge of the circle, just watching. The pattern they're making is unclear at first. Just geometric shapes, lines that interlace like vines. But slowly, faces emerge. A man with wings on his sandals, a woman riding a chariot pulled by serpents, a girl arms raised,
surrounded by thread. You lean closer. It's Arachne again. Or maybe it's you. The pattern shimmers slightly, then fades. A breeze stirs the courtyard. A few petals fall from a tree above and land on the cloth. No one moves to brush them off. The petals become part of the tapestry. As you stand, a girl offers you a bit of dyed wool, saffron yellow. You take it, tuck it away. You walk through a side gate and out into the fields. The sun has set now. The horizon is lit with afterglow, the land darkening to indigo. You hear someone humming the same tune the old woman used. You hum along. And somewhere, very far off but unmistakably real, a spider weaves a web between two olive branches. Not to catch, but to remember.
You're walking now, quietly, through a grove where every tree seems to hum. There's no wind, not really, but the air moves all the same, gently, as if the branches are breathing. You trail your hand along the bark of an olive tree, its trunk gnarled and furrowed like the face of a very old storyteller. A cicada buzzes somewhere. The scent of thyme rises from the underbrush. Somewhere to your left, a stream is talking to itself, just loud enough to be part of the landscape, but not so loud as to require interpretation. You pause. The shadows here are longer, not threatening, just watchful. You step carefully between roots that form natural stepping stones, weaving your way through a place that feels older than roads, older than myths. Up ahead, there's a temple ruin, not grand, not gold, just quiet. Columns half collapsed, a statue missing a nose and most of its hands. The inscriptions faded, weathered into whisper, but you recognize the symbol. A helmet, a shield, a thread. Athena's place, one of many. And suddenly, you're not alone again. A figure sits on the temple steps, not young, not old, wearing a robe the color of storm clouds and olive leaves. She doesn't look at you, but you know she sees you. Her hair is bound with a strip of cloth, her sandals neatly set beside her on the step. Beside her lies a spindle, spinning of its own accord. You sit down 2 steps below, and wait. She speaks, eventually, without turning. Do you know what she made? You nod slowly. You've heard the tale already, but you say it anyway. It helps to say things out loud sometimes. She wove the sins of the gods, and that's true. That's the part the stories agree on, even if they get twitchy around the edges. Arachne, mortal girl, wove images of divine misdeeds, Zeus's trickery, Poseidon's temper, Apollo's vanity, scenes the gods would rather forget. Murals made not with paint or chisel, but with the patient flick of thread and shuttle. Mainstream historical fact? In ancient Greek temples, especially those of Athena, women were often tasked with weaving ceremonial cloths, called peploi for the gods. These weren't simple blankets. They were narrative textiles, big enough to drape a statue and dense with mythological meaning. Quirky tidbit. Some of the peploi may have included subtle critiques of the gods, images only visible up close, stitched in under brighter threads. We don't have any of them left, of course. Fabric doesn't fossilize easily. But vase paintings sometimes show women weaving things that suggest commentary. Historians still argue whether Arachne's myth reflects a suppressed tradition of feminist descent or if it's simply a tale warning young artists to stay in their lane. Either way, the question remains, why not praise her for her skill? Why punish truth spoken in silk? The woman on the step shifts. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't wise either. You nod again. The stream murmurs a counterpoint. The shadows stretch. She challenged me, she continues, and she didn't hold back. Neither did I. There's no bitterness there,
just weariness, like someone who's told the same story too many times and still can't find the ending. You think about all the ways myths clean themselves up over time. The complicated parts fade, the gods become simpler, the mortals more foolish. But not here, not with this tale. This one stays messy. You reach down and touch the earth beneath the step. It's warm, alive. She made beauty out of fury, you say quietly, and you gave her 8 legs and a bad reputation. There's a long silence. Then softly, it was mercy. You glance up. She would have died, the goddess continues, like Niobe, like Semele, like so many who speak too plainly. You think about that for a moment. Would that have been worse, you ask? The figure finally turns. Her eyes are like owl feathers and midnight storms. It would have been final. Another silence, but this one doesn't stretch as far. It folds neatly between you. You still see her sometimes, you say. A nod. In the corners, in the rafters, in the places where stories cling. Another nod. She still spins. A third nod, almost a smile. You stand, brushing the dust from your tunic. The stars are out now, soft dots in the sky that feels closer than usual. You walk down from the temple, leaving Athena with her thoughts and her spindle and her endless ambiguity. Back in the grove, something glints in the moonlight. A web, strung low between 2 branches, tiny, perfect geometry, vibrating ever so slightly in the night air. You crouch beside it. There's a spider in the middle, just waiting. Not hiding, not apologizing, just waiting. You wonder if it dreams in thread. Then, gently, you blow a kiss toward the web. It sways, just a little. And you keep walking. The grove thins. The stream winds away. Your feet find the dusty path again. This time, you know where it's going. Back to the village. Back to your bed. But not before one last stop. There's a hut on the edge of the road. Simple, round, thatched roof. Light spills from the doorway, golden and flickering. You knock, even though the door is already open. Inside, a woman weaves by firelight. She doesn't look up, just gestures to the stool across from her. You sit. She passes you a shuttle. You take it. The loom stands between you like a shared heartbeat. Neither of you speaks. You don't need to. Together, you weave a scene. Not of gods, nor mortals, nor punishment. Just a grove, a girl, a goddess, and a thread that never ends. You wake up on the same stool, only now the fire's out and the hut is empty. The loom still stands, thread taut, the half-woven tapestry gently swaying as if someone just walked away. But there's no one here, only you, the quiet room, and the rhythmic creak of the loom breathing in its sleep. Your fingers are wrapped around the shuttle still. You let it go. Outside, dawn's coming on shy and golden. The sky looks washed in milk, pale blues and pearly streaks trailing behind the hills. You step into the cool grass barefoot and stretch your arms until your shoulders pop. 2 satisfying clicks, like stone weights being lifted off a temple altar. You keep walking. The road back to town winds along a ridge, with sheep paths crossing it like lazy veins. It's a gentle walk, and a long one, giving you plenty of time to think. About threads, about choices, about how some stories don't quite end. They just loop around and change shape. Because back in the village, the name Arachne still gets whispered, sometimes as warning, sometimes as legend, sometimes as a punchline, but always present. And even though no one admits it out loud, there's a reason the women hang their weaving higher on feast days, so no gods can get jealous or inspired. You pass an old man walking a goat and nod politely. He squints at you, like he almost recognizes your face, but not quite. Maybe he's seen you in a dream. Maybe you're imagining that. You ask if he knows the story of the girl who wove too well. He chuckles. "Oh, aye," he says, "but they tell it different these days." He taps his temple with one calloused finger. "Some say she was a witch. Some say she's still out there spinning in the caves." Then he adds with a wink, "And some say she's the reason our socks never match." He and the goat wander off. You walk on. And this time, the village really is there, just as you left it. Clay tiles catching the sunrise, smoke rising from the baker's chimney, a sleepy dog stretching its spine into an arch and letting out a long, slow sigh. You duck into your doorway. The air inside smells like olive oil, linen, and yesterday's onions, comforting in that very human way. You settle at your own loom. No one's telling you what to weave this time. No temple commission, no contest, no challenge. Just you and the threads and the quiet hum of the room. Your shuttle moves slowly at first, clumsy, uncertain, but it finds a rhythm, your rhythm, and your hands remember. You begin with olive branches, a winding stream, a girl sitting cross-legged in the grass, tracing patterns with a stick. You weave her mouth open in a laugh. You let the thread curve and flick with mischief. You let her be brilliant. Mainstream historical fact: ancient Greek society rarely celebrated women for their intellect or artistry, especially not when it rivaled the divine. Myths like Arachne's often served as cautionary tales about knowing your place, but evidence from surviving frescoes and grave goods suggests women were more involved in the artistic economy than the myths imply. Quirky tidbit: some archaeologists have found miniature looms buried in children's graves, likely toys, but possibly symbolic tools of identity. They hint at how early and seriously young girls were introduced to the art of weaving. Historians still argue whether the Arachne myth was originally meant as pure propaganda, or if it evolved from older, now-lost folk tales about spider goddesses and fate weavers. The Greek moidai, the fates, also spun thread, but no one punished them for their work. In fact, they decided the lifespans of all beings. You tug a loose thread back into place. And just like that, she's smiling again. Arachne. Girl. Artist. Spider. Myth. Warning. Wonder. All of it. You don't weave her ending. You let that part dangle. Not every story needs one. Outside, someone's calling names down the road. The market's opening. Chickens are getting loud. A lyre is being tuned. Badly. The world moves on. But inside this quiet room, the thread still hums. You add a border. Small spirals, neat corners. Then, in one little spot, barely bigger than your fingernail, you weave something for yourself. A snail, and beside it, a dragon. Both very small, both very smug. Because why not? The tapestry grows, the light rises, and Arachne's story winds onward, soft and strange, in hands like yours. You lean back. Let the shuttle rest. You've earned a nap.
The nap doesn't last. You lie there, still in the warmth of your weaving bench, eyes half closed, the scent of dust and wool and last night's embers purling softly in your nose. But sleep doesn't come, Not really. It never does when your head is full of thread. And today, it's not just thread. It's that shimmer between story and truth, the part where your fingers know more than you do. You get up, slowly. Every joint sighs. Outside, the streets are buzzing now. A woman haggles for fish down by the pier. A boy with a reed pipe is playing a song that has only 3 notes, but infinite enthusiasm. You hear an old priest coughing his way through morning prayers somewhere behind a half-closed door. And you go visit the temple. You don't dress up. You don't bring an offering. You don't even plan what to say. You just walk in like a person who's trying to understand something she's lived with her whole life and still finds confusing. The temple smells the way temples always do. Stone, wax, a little decay, a little hope. The statue of Athena looms at the end of the hall, gleaming faintly in the flickering torchlight. Gold lips, marble eyes, spear like a frozen lightning bolt. You stand in front of her for a while. You think about everything that's been said. You think about pride, punishment, perfection, power. And then you speak, very quietly, almost under your breath. Did it have to be a spider? No answer, of course. Or maybe the answer is in the silence, or in the fact that a real spider is lowering itself from the corner of the statue's helmet right now, descending with a grace no mortal weaver could ever replicate. You watch it. You do not flinch. You follow it with your eyes all the way to the base of the statue, where it touches down and disappears into a crack between the stones. And maybe you imagine it, or maybe not, but it looks for all the world like it walks away with purpose. You leave the temple and walk toward the harbor. The wind has picked up and carries the smell of salt and roasted barley. A flock of gulls wheels overhead, arguing loudly about nothing important. Down by the dock, a foreign merchant is unloading bolts of dyed silk, bright turquoise, deep saffron, the kind of colors that make your fingers twitch just to touch them. You ask the price. He tells you with a grin too wide to trust. You haggle. You win. You walk away with a scrap of cloth so vivid it makes your old tunic feel like dust. You press it to your cheek. It's softer than anything you've ever woven. You'll study it, try to figure out how it was made, steal a little knowledge, maybe. Not out of pride, just curiosity. Which is worse, some say. Historians still argue whether curiosity was ever truly welcomed in the ancient world, or simply tolerated when convenient. The Greeks told stories where curiosity opened boxes, unleashed plagues, turned women into spiders. And yet they built temples to wisdom. Mixed messages, really. Mainstream historical fact? Ancient Greek temples weren't just for worship. They were community centers, archives, even proto-museums. Some housed libraries, others displayed mechanical marvels powered by water or steam. The line between divine and scientific knowledge was thinner than we often imagine. Quirky tidbit? In some regional festivals for Athena, women held secret weaving competitions in her honor, echoes, perhaps, of Arachne's defiant contest. The winners got to present ceremonial cloaks for the goddess's statue each year. You stroll back home with the silk scrap clutched like treasure. At the corner near the olive press, someone's painted a mural. You don't remember it being there yesterday. It's crude, finger-painted maybe, but unmistakable. A girl, half spider, half human, sitting on a thread above a city, watching, waiting, smiling. You pause, smile back, then keep walking. Back at your house, your loom is waiting. You thread the silk between your fingers. It glides like water. This time you start with something simple, a sky. You use the silk for the sunset. You add a figure, tiny, sitting beneath a tree, arms wrapped around her knees. You stitch in a spider dangling overhead, and just beside it, a goddess watching, not with anger, just watching. You weave them both into the same sky, the same story. No winners, no losers, just thread, just life.
You keep weaving. The sun dips lower as your shuttle swings back and forth, each pass of thread a steady heartbeat in the quiet room. There's something meditative about it now. Not prideful, not desperate, not even ambitious. Just calm, persistent movement. Weave, pull, beat, repeat. A small oil lamp flickers on the shelf nearby, casting a gentle light across the loom. Outside, voices soften with the end of the day. Someone is lighting a fire. Someone else is laughing, tired and warm. You hum again, not even aware you're doing it, the same rhythm you always fall into when your hands are faster than your thoughts. The tapestry takes shape slowly. The goddess is still there, standing on one side of the sky, but now you're adding more. An olive tree, its leaves gilded with fine thread, a rocky hill with a goat peering over the edge, a wide river, glittering with dyed strands of blue flax. The spider watches from a thread stretched between two clouds, still there, still unbothered. You smile. For the first time today, it feels like the story belongs to you. Weaving like this makes you think about stories, not just the ones told in temples, but the ones passed around in kitchens, between neighbors, across generations. Did you hear what the gods did this time? No, tell me. Well, Hera turned a woman into a bird again. Don't ask. Some of these tales are older than writing. Some are younger than your grandmother's favorite cooking pot. And some, like yours, shift depending on who's doing the telling. Historians still argue whether Arachne's story was originally meant to be a cautionary tale or something closer to satire. Ovid, who famously wrote it down in his Metamorphoses, was not exactly a fan of unquestioned authority. Some scholars believe the tale was his way of poking at the rigidity of divine punishment, of suggesting, maybe, that creativity shouldn't come with consequences. Others, they see it as a stern moral. Don't challenge the gods. Don't overstep. Know your place. And still others read it as a more complicated dance between mortal excellence and divine jealousy, between truth and myth, between beauty and the price it sometimes extracts. Your own opinion? You're still weaving it, thread by thread. You pause for a sip of barley water. It's gone warm, but still earthy and grounding. You roll your shoulder and shake out your fingers. They ache now, but in that satisfying way, a soreness earned, not imposed. In the distance, temple bells ring softly, evening prayers. You don't go tonight. Instead, you step out onto your little balcony and look up. The sky is turning that rich violet shade that only happens right after sunset, when stars are starting to whisper behind the veil of dusk. A spider's web glistens in the corner of the roof beam. You didn't see it before, but now it catches the lamplight like spun silver. No spider in sight, just the web, swaying slightly in the breeze. You imagine what it might have caught today. A moth or two, a bit of dust, a tiny fragment of song carried in on the wind. Back inside, you light another lamp and return to the loom. You decide to add a second figure, another woman, not a goddess, not a spider, just a mortal. Someone sitting at a loom, thread in hand, watching her own weaving take on a life of its own. You wonder if anyone will understand it. Quirky tidbit?
In ancient Athens, young girls often took part in a ritual called the archeia, where they would act as little bears in honor of Artemis. But in some border villages, weaving competitions were held instead, playful, chaotic affairs where the goal was less perfection and more creative mayhem. Some fragments from those festivals even mention ribbons being awarded to tapestries that made people laugh. So maybe humor wasn't banned from the loom after all. Your shuttle slows. Your eyelids do too. Not quite sleep, not quite awake, you fall into that soft space where hands keep working and thoughts drift like leaves in a stream. You remember a time not long ago when you thought weaving would be your punishment, your sentence, a life spent in thread. Now, it's your language. Each line a sentence, each knot a punctuation mark, each shimmer of color a whispered emotion. And through it all, you're telling your own version of things. That's something not even the gods can take away.
Your fingers twitch in your sleep. You don't realize you've dozed off, cheek resting lightly against the frame of the loom, the shuttle still caught between warp and weft. The oil lamp flickers gently beside you, casting long shadows that sway across the woven threads like passing clouds. You dream you are a thread, not a weaver, not even a design, just one simple, silent line of flax or wool moving through the hands of a giant woman whose eyes are the color of smoke and rain. She doesn't speak, but her humming sounds a lot like the wind moving through pine trees. She weaves mountains and rivers and cities, all layered over one another. Time collapses. A spider climbs one of her fingers and disappears behind a golden thread. Then you wake up. A soft, confused blink. The room is dimmer now. The fire in the brazier has settled into a steady, warm glow. No one else is stirring. Outside, even the crickets seem to have nodded off. You rub your eyes and glance at the tapestry. Still there, still unfinished. You smile. No rush. With a stretch, you rise from your seat and cross the room. You reach for the small bowl of water beside your window. Cool and clean, it refreshes your face and brings you fully back to yourself. Funny, isn't it, how you can slip between stories like layers of fabric. One moment you're Arachne, flushed and furious, toe-to-toe with a goddess. The next, you're just a girl with callous hands and a head full of colors. That tension never really leaves. Historians still argue whether the tale of Arachne was meant to elevate the idea of mortal artistry or crush it. Some believe she's meant to stand in for every craftsman who ever got too confident. Others say her tale survived because it resonated with anyone who ever got tired of keeping their head down. After all, there's something deliciously defiant in the idea of telling your truth in thread. No shouting, no arguments, just quiet defiance, stitch by stitch. And when that defiance comes with beauty, even better. You pull on your cloak and step out into the courtyard. The sky has cleared since earlier. A sea of stars twinkles above, framed by the old columns and tiled roofs. You hear the hoot of a sleepy owl. Somewhere near the bathhouse, a small creature rustles. Maybe a lizard, maybe your neighbor's half-feral cat. The air smells of rosemary and cooling stone. You take a seat on a worn bench and gaze up at the stars. There's something comforting about them, their steadiness, their silence. You think about the constellations. Orion with his club and lion's pelt. Cassiopeia sitting proudly on her celestial chair. And of course, there's one tiny cluster near the edge of the sky that some say is Arachne herself. Not officially, of course, but certain traveling poets from Ionia claim they've seen a spider-shaped shimmer spinning its slow path through the heavens. Fringe folklore? Sure. But fringe folklore is where all the good stuff lives. The myths no one quite agrees on, the side stories that never make it into temple carvings, the local versions whispered between traders and grandmothers and insomniac shepherds. You return to your room and pick up your spindle. Not to start weaving again, just to hold it. The weight is familiar, centering. Once, when you were small, your aunt told you that spindles could be used for magic. Not the flashy, dramatic kind, the quiet, domestic kind. The kind of magic that kept families fed, children warm, and dreams protected. You didn't believe her at the time. Now you're not so sure. You lean back and close your eyes again. This time, no dreams, just darkness, soft and gentle, like wool soaked in lavender. Quirky tidbit? In the ancient world, spider silk was occasionally collected and used for wound dressings. It wasn't exactly common, those webs are delicate and hard to gather, but some Roman physicians swore by them, called it divine gauze, said it helped with healing. You wonder if anyone ever thought to wrap a goddess's wounded pride in spider webs. Probably not. You chuckle quietly to yourself. The tapestry will wait until morning. So will the loom and the threads and the 1,000 decisions that live between one corner of a cloth and the other. For now, it's enough to rest. The gods may never fully understand the patience it takes to weave something meaningful, but you do, and that's its own kind of worship.
The moon is high now, tracing soft silver across the courtyard tiles. You're back at your loom before dawn, drawn not by duty, but by curiosity. The thread calls to you, not with urgency, but with something gentler, like a story that wants telling, like a cat brushing past your ankle. You light a small lamp and settle in. The tapestry is more than halfway finished now. In it, gods scowl and strut, mortals toil and tangle, and at the center, a slender figure stands poised with thread in her fingers and defiance in her spine. You haven't decided whether it's Arachne or yourself. Maybe it's both. The loom creaks as you resume. Shuttle passes, beat, thread, pull. There's a rhythm to it, a heartbeat woven into wool and warp. Your mind wanders again, this time not to dreams but to facts, or, well, to things historians still argue about. Like whether Arachne's myth predates the Olympian pantheon. Some researchers believe her story may have been part of an older Anatolian tradition, local legends of women who wove fate, spider goddesses who walked the line between creation and destruction. There's no hard proof, of course, just hints in pottery and prayers. But that's the thing about myths. They don't need footnotes. They breathe, they morph, they follow us through time like smoke curling behind a torch. You pause your work to drink a bit of barley tea, lukewarm and slightly bitter. The brazier crackles softly beside you, and somewhere in the distance you hear the coo of doves waking up on a temple ledge. The city is beginning to stir, but not fully, not yet. Still time for weaving. You hum again, no tune in particular, maybe the same song your mother hummed, or maybe something entirely new. In moments like these, music becomes a thread too, one that carries you further into the pattern. You remember a lecture from years ago, some stern scholar talking about hubris. That was always the official interpretation of Arachne's story, wasn't it? Pride goeth before a fall. Don't challenge the gods. Stay in your lane. But even then, even as a student, you'd wondered, what if that wasn't the point? What if Arachne wasn't punished for arrogance, but for accuracy? She wove the truth. The gods didn't like it. It's not hard to believe. Even now, centuries later, rulers still dislike unflattering portraits. Change the artist, change the punishment. You tug a stubborn knot from your yarn and think about spiders. Did you know some species of orb weavers rebuild their webs every night? They eat the old one for protein and then spin a new one before dawn. Patient, repetitive, miraculous. Imagine the world if humans did the same. Imagine tearing up your resume each evening and starting from scratch, all before breakfast. Your tapestry grows. You've added little details now, hidden among the more obvious shapes. A pearl of thread becomes a spiral galaxy. A spindle resembles a crescent moon. A goddess's robe contains constellations. You don't remember planning them, they just arrived. That happens sometimes, when the fingers know what the brain hasn't caught up to yet. There's comfort in that.
You lean back slightly, giving your spine a break, and listen to the early morning stretching itself awake outside. The rooftops clatter as a gull lands, cooing in that voice only gulls use, somewhere between laughter and complaint. You picture it judging your tapestry. You're not sure if it approves. The loom sits before you like a doorway now, the cloth spilling over its bottom bar like a curtain about to rise. And in that moment, the myth reasserts itself, not in whispers or riddles, but in a flash of clarity. Athena's final act. She reaches forward. Her fingers, god-large and trembling with fury, touch the girl's brow. No grand proclamation, just a single sentence. Live on, then, if you must, but spin forever. And so, Arachne becomes not a corpse or a warning, but a creature, a new thing entirely, something low to the ground but impossible to ignore. That's the part you can't forget. Not the punishment, but the endurance. You think about how myths survive. Not because someone preserved them perfectly, but because people passed them on, tangled and transformed. Maybe that's why the spider kept spinning, because the story still needed telling. Historians still debate whether this transformation was meant as cruelty or mercy. Some say Athena took pity at the last moment. Others insist it was the harshest sentence imaginable. Endless work, no praise, a kind of divine exile. But maybe it wasn't punishment at all. Maybe it was immortality. You smile again, softer this time. Your own cloth stretches before you, impossibly rich with color now. You filled in the final scenes, Athena's expression, carved in spirals, Arachne's form mid-shift, and around them thread that loops and flows like a river. Not bound by panels, not tidy. It spills into the border, spills into the margin, spills into the silences between breaths. You remember when you were younger, reading the myth for the first time. The teacher called Arachne foolish, said she should known her place. But you remember a different feeling. Admiration. Arachne didn't fight with a sword or rally an army. She simply wove. And somehow that was enough to shake a goddess. The wind stirs again, carrying with it the scent of rosemary and wet stone. Someone has lit a cooking fire in the next courtyard. You picture porridge boiling in a bronze pot, and a sleepy child rubbing their eyes, another thread in the larger tapestry. You press your palm to the cloth again. The fibers hum, faint and real. Your own story won't be sung by bards. There's no temple bearing your name. But maybe, just maybe, someone will see this weaving and wonder. Wonder who made it? Why it shimmers just so? Why the borders are filled with leaves and spiders and a girl's hand mid-stitch? Maybe they'll smile. Maybe they'll add a thread of their own. You let the shuttle rest and walk to the window. The spider is still there, her web dusted with dew, each strand catching the light like a line of silver ink. She's finished spinning, for now. You offer a little bow,
Not mockery, not superstition, just respect. You return to your seat. There's another roll of wool nearby, another pattern waiting. But not yet. Not this minute. First, you breathe. Because you've remembered something important, something easy to forget in the rhythm of creation and critique. You're still here, and you're still weaving. Just like Arachne. Just like all of us.
The world quiets again, not in the way it sleeps, but in the way it listens. You sit still for a moment longer, the loom before you like a story half-whispered. Threads gleam faintly in the morning light, and you notice, really notice, how each fiber curves around its neighbor, how no single color carries the image, but together they speak. There's one more part of the tale, one more unraveling. Because the myth didn't end with Arachne's transformation. Not really. It lingered, as all good stories do, in the threads that followed. Spiders became symbols of artistry, patience, and mischief. Sometimes wisdom, sometimes deceit. Some ancient Greek households even welcomed them. Arachne, now beyond mortal form, continued to spin through fable and legend, each generation reweaving her meaning. Some saw her as a cautionary tale, others a patron saint of stubborn brilliance. In Roman versions, the name stays the same, but the tone shifts, less divine wrath, more tragic pride. Still others imagined her surviving, ancient and web-cloaked, hiding in temple corners, waiting for stories worth spinning into silk. Scholars still argue whether the myth was originally meant to praise Athena or quietly admire Arachne's defiance. Some think it was propaganda, rebellion wrapped in pretty metaphor. Others believe it was an early portrait of artistic rebellion, a girl who dared to show truth, not flattery, and paid the price for honesty. But to you, the meaning's gentler now. You picture a world of looms and quiet corners, of minds that hum like wheels turning, of hands that create even when no one is watching. You imagine Arachne's descendants not cursed, but chosen, not punished, but persistent. And somewhere in this moment, as your eyes flick toward the web outside your window, you realize you've been narrating this to yourself like a lullaby, the kind of story that nestles under your thoughts, soft and sticky like spider silk. You let your shoulders fall. The room shifts around you. No goddess looms, no contests rage, just the gentle hum of memory and thread. So you reach for that new skein of wool, the one tucked beneath your bench, the one the novice spun yesterday with slightly uneven tension. You hold it in your palm and smile. It's imperfect but eager, raw but full of stories. You slide the next thread into the shuttle and feel its weight change the balance. Not much, just enough. And with that, quietly, reverently, you begin to weave again.